All right, so let's have a quick look at our working environment that we're going to be working in. So this is just the programs that we're going to be using. So the main operating system that I'm using is Kubuntu on the latest 18 stable version. Probably already noticed it in the beginning when I was opening up the file browser. It looks doesn't look like Windows or Mac. So I'm using Linux for different reasons. The main one is memory management. So basically I find that Linux doesn't hog as much memory, and it's also a bit more efficient in assigning and releasing that, especially when you're working with more heavier kind of stuff like flip sims, what we're going to be doing. I think it's a bit more stable, but obviously this comes down to your personal preference. So use whatever you like, whatever you're comfortable with. For the effects stuff, we're going to be using Houdini, obviously, and on the latest version 18, using Indie version. So just remember. And for compositing, it's not that big of a part, but just to point out, we're going to be using Fusion, since this is free compared to Nuke. I mean, we could be using the I think there's like a training version or something available. I know how to use Fusion a bit, so that's why I went for that. The reason why I'm using version 9 is because I think all the versions that came after it were tied into DaVinci Resolve, at least for the free versions. I'm not using the studio version because for me at the moment there's no benefit from it. So just quickly pull Fusion over here. This is the last version that is not tied into Resolve. I tried it for, I think, maybe 10 minutes or something, and then gave up because it didn't work as expected and it was quite slow. So basically what you would be doing, you have to like set up a timeline and then from there create a comp and then open that up, and then it's a different workflow. And here you just get plain Fusion, or you just do your regular comping, you save your comp files as usual. So probably not going to be using this too much unless we're going to look at renders and stuff. And then when we do the final comp, we're going to go over this a bit. But just to let you know, if you want to get a hold of the last version that is free, go on, I think it's Blackmagic, the download section there. You can find the version 9, which is the last one that is not coupled. If you're using the studio version, so you have a studio, then I think it doesn't matter because I think the studio version of Fusion is not tied into Resolve. So that one is still separate. Just if you're going for the free one, this one is in Resolve. And last but not least, we have for our render management, we're using Deadline. So I'm going to pull this over real quick here. So this is basically a farm management tool, job management tool. If you're used to working in a studio, you probably know this already. Maybe not going to be Deadline, but something similar. And the main reason I'm using this is just way easier to manage a bit more complicated scenes. So if you're not just caching 5 different things, but you got like multiple things going on, as I do have here, just did a couple of tests the last couple of days, and here you can just set dependencies. So for example, you see here the blue stuff is finished, the white stuff is ready to render, and then the orange stuff is pending, so basically waiting for other stuff to finish, which is quite useful, especially if you're running a sim, for example, and then or a source, and then you want to have the sim kick in after that. And even if you're just working on one single workstation and you just have that tied into Deadline, like here I have 2, so I've got my laptop and my workstation, I would still recommend it because it's just a lot easier just managing your stuff, and it's just going to be more productive and save you a lot of headache when setting up the dependencies. You don't really have to think about it here. You just send it on the farm, and then here later you can modify or adjust the dependencies as you're going. Or if you see, this job didn't work out, let's just resubmit it. You can just go here and basically overwrite the scene file that it's reading from, and then just say requeue, whatever. And if it didn't start yet, it doesn't matter anyway. So it's just a lot more flexible. Deadline comes with 2 free licenses, so you can just go ahead, sign up. I think you need an Amazon account, and then log in, download Deadline, install it. It takes a bit of setup if you're on Linux. On Windows, it's quite straightforward. Haven't done it on Mac OS yet, but should be fairly simple. The only thing that you have to look out for if you're tying in, for example, your laptop, or if you have another workstation, it can access the same scene files and stuff, and right into the same directory. So here I have projects folder, storage folder. Projects is just for the regular projects, and then storage, here I have my cache, and then in here got all the stuff that gets saved, and these two are shared over the network. Also fairly standard workflow how to do that. This is something you don't have to do. You can still rely on Houdini dependency graphs and stuff like that for doing this if you like working that way. I just prefer having this because for starters, it might get you used to working with a farm, and if you're used to working with a farm, you don't want to miss that. And especially if you have multiple machines, it's easy to just hook them up. And if you have more than two, you have to buy a license. So you would but you would have to buy a license for 3. So for example, if you just want to add one additional machine, then you have to buy a license for all of them, because it's just free for two machines, which is still pretty cool, because the capabilities here are pretty awesome. You can also tie in Fusion, for example, or Nuke or whatever, or if you're using Maya. Basically, if you have a look here at the plugins that are available, so there's a bunch of it. And also, if you have the normal effects version of or the core of Houdini, which is not an indie version, you can take advantage of IFD generation, and this also creates automatic IFD jobs. So if you, for example, submit your Mantra node, it creates a job for the IFD generation, and afterwards pens the job for the Mantra rendering. So pretty handy stuff here. Just wanted to point this out, since I will be referring to this and we will be using it. You don't have to, so whatever suits you best. But just wanted to give a quick intro to this. I mean, we will get into more advanced stuff, like sending dependencies, stuff like that, later on. All right, so this wraps it up for the working environment, the software we're going to be using, and then let's head over to the next section, where we will be starting to set up our files